Grand Rising, everyone. Good to see you this morning in this house. You're the first one in on the Zoom room. Can you type in there if you can see the slide and if your my volume is loud enough for you? And good morning to all of you who are joining by way of the YouTube channel. We'll be getting started here shortly. Excellent. Good morning. Come on into the room this morning. And as you come in, go ahead and drop the city or state that you're coming in from. And if you want to drop a salutation in, feel free to do that. Same for those of you who are on the YouTube channel this morning. We will start here shortly. We're right at the top of the hour. I believe we are right at 8:59. So we'll be starting here at 9 o'clock shortly. Awesome. Carolina, South Carolina, yes. Them Gamecocks, that women's basketball team is something else. I look forward to see them turning it up here in the final game. All right, let me get something to drink while we wait. Do, do, do. All right, I see the room is populating. Good morning to you, Genevieve. And I see Miss House. Um, I'm wondering if anybody's having problem getting in this morning. I sent the link out, a free refreshed link, so you shouldn't have any problems getting in this morning. All right, I see the room is populating. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Hasefi. Good morning to you. If you had problems getting in, type something or put a thumbs up or put a thumbs down, in the chat, or a thumbs up, whichever one is most convenient for you if you had a problem getting in this morning. Renee, good to see you this morning. If you're on the YouTube channel, I can't see you at the present moment, but I will pop in at the close of this morning's presentation. Good to see you, Genevieve. Good, Mom, Miss House. 1 second. Let me check something else right quick, and then we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right. Good morning, everyone. Peace and welcome. If you're joining us for the first time, I welcome you here. If you if you've been here before, again, I want to say welcome back. Either way, I'm glad that you decided to join us this morning, what we call Resurrection Sunday. My name is Greg Stanton, also known as Asar. I serve as your facilitator of the Sunday of Science Living Seminars that is sponsored through Oasis Everywhere. It's a community built not on what you must believe, but on who you are becoming. Before we go anywhere today, I want to acknowledge something. This weekend, much of the world is observing what they call Easter Resurrection Sunday. And I want to say, with full respect, I'm not going to give you the traditional message on this morning. Not because resurrection doesn't matter, but because resurrection matters too much to be confined to one story, one tradition, one Sunday morning. So today we're going to go deeper. We go older, yes, and we go home. Again, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Mute your microphones to silence out the noise that may be in your background. We'll have the opportunity to engage one another. And I want you to open your heart to this morning's presentation. This morning's message, From Commit to the Cross, the original resurrection narrative. I'm Greg Stanton. I want you to enter to a space where you can remember, reassemble, and rise on this morning. I want to start with a question this morning. Not a theological question, but a human question this morning as we move into this morning's conversation. Have you ever felt like something in your life was falling apart or something fell apart? Maybe not dramatically, but quietly. A belief you held for years stopped making sense. A community you once belonged to began to feel like a costume that you may have been wearing instead of a home you actually lived in, or a version of yourself that used to work but just don't work anymore. Some of us have gone through this specifically around religion. We sat in church and started asking questions that the church didn't have space for. We read things, we learned things, we felt things that didn't fit the framework we had been given. And guess what? Many of us left. Or we drifted, or perhaps we stayed in the building while something inside of us quietly walked out. And here's the thing, nobody prepares you for when that happens. When you begin to deal with what I call cognitive dissonance, the hunger doesn't leave with the doctrine. You can leave the church and you still feel the pull towards something that's sacred. You can deconstruct every belief that you were handed and still wake up someone is reaching for something real. I know this because I've been through this. When I stepped away and would wake up longing for while I was in that search. And sometimes it's so easy to return to the familiar because the unfamiliar is uncharted waters. So you can't destruct every belief you were handed all at one time. You have to slow it down and know that in due season, all of it will make sense. You know, you're reaching for something real while you're going through this process. This reaching, this hunger that all of us have experienced, is not a problem to be fixed. That is, the resurrection inside of each of us trying to happen. So there's nothing wrong with your faith. You may be hungering for more, but the searching that's inside will never really stop. Now, let me tell you what most of us were taught about the resurrection. We were told it was a one time event, it happened to one man, in one place and in one tradition. And our job was to believe it happened or face consequences. You would be isolated. And there was a time in America where the majority of the people believed the same narrative. And if you weren't showing up to church on Sunday, or if you weren't in that conversation, you felt kind of ostracized. But things have changed. You know, the world is opening up. People have access to so much information, they can check the receipts. Now, I want to ask you something. Where does that story that you've been given actually come from? Too many people believe a story, but they have never checked out the story. And if they're checking out the story, they're checking the story out from the source document that everything's hinges upon. Now, where does this story actually come from? Most of us were not taught that the death and resurrection narrative appears thousands of years before the Council of Nicaea. Now, the Council of Nicaea was a convened by Emperor Constantine in 325 AD. Now, that's 325 years after the event of the cross. And he convened it by calling all the church bishops, and his goal was to standardize and consolidate Christian doctrine for a variety of reasons. But I'm not going to go into that this morning. I just maybe want to introduce to you to some things that will help you deal with this. Things just don't fit anymore. Most of us were not taught that the images of a divine being born of a sacred mother who dies and rises again appears in cultures across the ancient world, far in antiquity. And most of us were not taught that one of the oldest and most complete versions of this story comes from the Nile Valley, from Kemet, from a tradition that predates Christianity by thousands of years. So I'm not here to start a debate this morning. I'm not asking you to reject anything this morning. You showed up here this morning out of inquisitiveness, and I want to be able to quench the thirst that so many have regarding their beliefs. I'm asking you to consider something this morning. What if the story you were given was a later chapter of a much older book? And what if the older book, guess what, belongs to you? So, one of the things I encourage individuals to do is to get a timeline out. And on this timeline, I want you to mark significant dates and begin to look at it on the timeline. And just looking at the timeline, some things will not begin to add up. When I was looking at the timeline and I took it back to, let's say, 60,000 years, 100,000 years, back to the time where there are actually archaeological finds that show that mankind was on this planet Earth thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years ago. And then I bring that timeline up to date. One of my biggest questions was, why did God, if the redemptive story that we've been told is true, why did God wait until such a long time before sending his only begotten son per the narrative? And for me, that just doesn't add up. So the billions of people that have come and gone and uh, did not get the opportunity to experience this story that we call the salvation story, I think it's just kind of um, I could not wrap my mind around the possibility of this being true, and all those people who have come and gone, that their life has no meaning or they end up in this terrible place. So, as a kid, I just had these kinds of questions. And I'm sure you have some questions this morning also that maybe you're still pondering this morning, long before the cross. And that's what I want to talk about. In ancient Kemet, what we now call Egypt, or what I like to call the individuals who call themselves Egyptologists call Egyptians Egypt, but it's not. It's called Kemet. That was a sacred story. at the center of spiritual life. And this story was about Asar. I want to walk you through this story, not as mythology to memorize, but as a mirror to recognize yourself in. Asar was a great being, whole, powerful, purposeful. He was likened to what we call Adam, and his brother Set, representing chaos, ego, disruption, plotted against him. This is where we get our term Satan from. Set dismembered Asar. So I'm not going to go into the totality of the story, but you can look this story up. There's receipts all over the place about the story. His brother dismembered him, chopped him up, and scattered the pieces across the land. This was a fragmentation. Does it kind of sound familiar? Some of us know exactly what it feels like to have something shattered, what we thought was whole. Maybe it was a belief system. That's how I felt when I initially began to go deeper into my faith. It began to come apart. It could be a relationship. It can be an identity. It could be a community. The pieces scattered, and we didn't know how to put them back together. And this is part of the human condition. This is something that are we all face. So, but the story doesn't end there with the um, segmenting or the separating or the being dismembered. Aset, Asar's beloved. Um, we have in this story, we have three characters. We have Aset, Asar, and Harut. You also may hear them call Osiris, Isis, and Horus. But when we look at these three figures, the two prominent figures early on is first Asar, who is dismembered, and then his cohort, Aset. So one represents the divine masculine principle, the other is the divine feminine principle. And when you put those two together, they're able to produce something. And in this story, it represents family. But what we find here, she refused to accept the fragmentation as final. She searched, she grabbed every piece she could find. She used her wisdom, her love, her knowledge of divine law to remember what had been dismembered, to put things back together. Remember, not remember as in recall, but remember as in put the members back together. Restore what was scattered, reclaim what was lost. And here is what I want you to notice today. Aset did not just think Asar back together. It wasn't a mental thing. She searched, she gathered, she worked. So you need to know that resurrection is not passive. The work of remembering is real. And many of you have already been doing this work. You just didn't have a name for it. So you look at this image. So in this story, she puts all the pieces back together. This is where we have the first mummification shown on the tombs. We see that he was wrapped in bandages. She had found all the pieces, put them all back together. But there was one piece that she could not find because it's believed that this essential piece had been eaten by a sea creature, and that was the phallus of his genitals. So without the genitals, he wasn't complete. He was not able to bring life. And in this story, they say that she fashioned a new genital and placed it on its body. And here we see, when you're looking at this, many people will say this is a actual obelisk, but it's a tekken. Obelisk, obelisk is um, the Greek name for this image. And many of us don't even have any clue of what this image represents. It's it's so common as crosses. It's all over um, ancient Kemet. It's even in our capitals, in some of our cities, and these images. I mean, this particular what we call a Tekken. That's the original name. Tekken represents vertical power, life force, and divine emergence. Now, this is interesting because when you just look at this, you don't see anything to have to do with the resurrection, but it represents the resurrection, the restoring of the erection of Asar to bring forth life. Now, you have to listen to this story not just from the physical perspective, but what is the principle that is being spoken? To bring life into the world, it takes two: it takes a womb and it takes a phallus. This symbol represents a phallus. Most people have no clue about that. They see it as just an obelisk. They see it as a tekken, but it represents the bottom half of the ankh. The top half of the ankh, it represents the womb. The bottom half, the womb and two ovaries. So that's where you have the like the symbol. You have the oval with the two pieces go out to the side, which represents the ovaries, and then at the very opening of that um, oval of the womb, you have the Tekken, and it all sits on top because in the story, after she found this piece, this her spirit hovered over the top of this Tekken, this erected phallus that was created, and she was impregnated. Now, this story is just as you may say, how could she be impregnated by an object? The same way that Mary was impregnated by an object or an angel that spoke to her and said that she would bring forth a child. And so, from this image, which we are not really cognizant of what it's saying to us, is saying the divine masculine and the divine feminine must be present to produce anything. And inside of each of us, this story, the Asarian drama, represents us just as well as what we call the traditional Christ story represents us. We talk about being crucified, that we may live, that we crucify the flesh, that we may live, that we come into a oneness of being, that we are all seen as sons and daughters of the Creator. And so when we look at this story, the Asarian drama, which predates the Christian story by thousands of years, we see that it's a ongoing story that helps us understand what transformation is all about. So we see in this story what she has done. As a result of her putting it all together, she searched for all the pieces, she put them all together, and the piece that was missing, she was creative. The divine feminine in all of us is the creative force. And so she creates this phallus, which is the Tekken, and then she hoovers over it and she's impregnated. Now, the result of impregnation is a child. And here's what emerged. So in this Asarian drama, we have Asar, Aset, which produces a child. What emerges is not what what was, it is what become. She didn't bring him back to life. She didn't bring Asar back to life. But we also need to know that in the comedic sense, he's called the Lord of the Underworld. He has the same titles that is given to Jesus is the titles that are given to Asar. And where does this connection come from? One predates the other. Now, Haru, the new consciousness is born. When we, in a traditional sense, accept this Christ consciousness, we don't accept Jesus, we accept the Christ consciousness. Something new is birthed in us. And in fact, the act of remembering something was born new because she remembered, she put it back together. Once we put it all together, something new comes forth. Haru. Haru represents each of us as the sons. So we are all we are Set, we are Asar, we are Haru in our totality, in the process of transformation, in the process of transformation, which is called resurrection. Haru is born. It's a new consciousness that we have, a new awareness, not Asar restored to what he was before, but something has emerged from the process of going through it. So I always say we grow through the things that we go through. This is the resurrection pattern. First, there's fragmentation. You must crucify yourself. Then there's a searching, that is to put it back together properly, a remembering. And then ultimately, there's a rising. And each day when the sun comes up, there's the rising. The sun is not risen once every 365 days, once a year. The sun rises daily, and the sun is representative of the son, both you and I, that we rise daily. And so when we put this story into um, a new narrative and say this is the way it is, we can miss because there's a recall, a remembering that we must go through. And here's what I want you to notice today. This pattern shows up in our human experience everywhere. It's not coincidence. It's not necessarily plagiarism. This is a universal truth about how consciousness grows. Things fall apart. We search for the pieces. We remember, and something new, something we could not have been before rises. So when your life appears to be falling apart, once it's all settles, you remember. You take the fragments, you pull them back together, understanding this is a sacred refusal to remain in pieces. So our lives, all of our lives, at some point appear to fall apart. But we have to pick the pieces up. We have to gather them. We have to remember them. We want to attach them and put them back together in a proper way. And when it comes to our religion, when it comes to even Christianity, for me, I had to deconstruct it. And it's a personal thing. I deconstructed it to reconstruct it. And it's not the same thing that I initially started with. And the same with each of you. When you let go of what has been, and when you come to the place of let me take my time and put this together, let me search the pieces out, let me find what piece matches what. That's part of what studying to show yourself approved, a workman who need not be ashamed, rightly defining the word of truth. And then there's a restoration that comes with. And this restoration is really a transformation that happens. Now, this is not one story. It's a universal pattern across cultures and across time. In Kemet, as Asar, Aset, and Heru, in the Greek tradition, you find it as the death and rebirth of Dionysus. You find it in the story of Persephone, descending and returning as a central figure in Greek mythology, known for embodying both life and death, light and shadow, ascent and descent. And yes, even in the story of Jesus. And so when we look at the story of Jesus, when we look at what we call the story of Christianity, it is a reworking of an age-old story. Now they're all stories. The story of Asar, Aset, and Haru. It's a story, but the story presents a principle that is practiced leads to true transformation. When you take the stories and make them literal, and then you hang your hat on the literalness of it, and you come to find out that some of the things that you believe were literal are not literal, then you may say, hogwash, I'm throwing it all out. But when you understand it's a story that has been co opted by contemporary cultures, and the retelling of the story may have lost some essence, that's why you have to deconstruct it and you have to reconstruct. So I'm not here this morning to try to encourage anyone to step away from what their beliefs are, but I believe those who are drawn to this voice, this frequency are those who are in the work of deconstruction, or maybe you're further down the road, you're into the reconstruction. So if you wherever you are, you're okay to be there. But I just want to offer this morning a simple affirmation to those who are in the process of transformation. Now, the resurrection pattern, it did not begin in one place. It is a pattern of consciousness, a pattern of becoming. And guess what? It belongs to all of us, each and every one of us. We have to take responsibility because when we talk about the resurrection narrative, it's really talking about an individual, you and I. That's why the word says, let this same power that was in Christ be in you, or in Jesus when he recognized with the Christ conscious. We all should be moving to I am one with the Father. I am one with Source. I am a uh, I am a manifestation of an aspect of Source. That's important. Now, the New Thought traditions, when it comes to the resurrection as consciousness and not just an event, the now this new um, expression that came in the late 1800s called the New Thought tradition, such as unity, science of mind, divine science. They got close to this. They got close to this new consciousness. They teach that resurrection is not just something that happened to Jesus. It is a principle available to everyone, a shift in consciousness, a renewal of awareness. Ernest Holm, he was the one who formulated what is called the science of mind. Uh, he called it the continuous renewal of life through mind. Charles Fillmore, with the Unity School of Thought, called it regeneration, raising consciousness stage by stage. They were pointing toward the same thing. But sometimes new thought can get a little abstract. I listen to some of the things people say. It gets really kind of weird. Someone is going through the hardest season of their life right now. And the teaching is just s- change your thinking. You may be going through something and they'll say, just change your thinking. Now, I often say, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. I believe that if you change your thought, the thought has the ability to change things. But I don't make it, it's not that simple. It's not just a hocus pocus type of change your focus that I'm teaching. It's a realization that you have to be dismembered. You just can't pick up piece of these teachings and say, okay, now that I name it and claim it, I got it. But you have to come into alignment with a new way of thinking, a new way of being, that you're not a human being, but you are a divine spirit being having a human expression in this container. Beloved, Aset did not just think or saw back together. She just didn't do positive thinking. She represented that she searched, she gathered, she worked. She used wisdom and effort, and each and every one of us are responsible for searching out the truth, for gathering it, for putting it back together. Study to show yourself approved, a workman who need not be ashamed, but rightly dividing the words of truth. So she used wisdom and effort. And we have to do that too. Wisdom enough to know that you don't keep doing the things you've been doing, expecting what you've been doing to give you another outcome. What the comedic story gives us is this, that abstract metaphysics sometimes misses, is that the honest acknowledgement that fragmentation is real, the searching is real, the work of remembering is real, and it's okay to search. It's okay to let go of what you once believed to be true in search of, is it actually true? And some point in all of our lives as adults, we have to put away childish things And we have to step up and we must examine what has been given to us by our grandparents, by those we esteem highly. They gave to us what they thought was right. And in many cases, they had never searched it out for themselves. So the work of remembering is real. And the rising that comes afterwards is also real. And that's what this day represents, the rising of the sun. It represents that there's a new day always dawning. When you go through the night of life, the sun will always rise. This SUN rises on the SONs. You're not being asked to pretend that something isn't falling apart, coming apart. You're being invited to recognize that falling apart is the beginning of the process, not evidence that you have failed. And sometimes that's how we feel. When I say we, I mean those of us who have stepped away from the traditional narrative, and we feel isolated, and many times you're ostracized. You are dealing with the old narrative that if you don't believe this way, you're going to hell. And that hell conversation has really been drilled into our core, that until you break free of it, you are going to always be pulled back to the old construction. I would have never thought, looking back 30, 40 years ago, that I would even be having this conversation, because I was a staunch hook, line, and sinker Christian. But I remember as a young kid, I had a conversation with God as I knew it. And I said to it, I was around the age of 12, if you are real, show me in my lifetime. And so God is not a man that it shall lie. And so God, over my lifetime, has shown me. I've had experiences. I've been on the other side of the world. I've been in communities where nobody knows anything about the narrative of Christianity, and they were living out a whole different spirituality. Are you saying that? I said to myself, are you saying, or a source asked me, because they believe different and have never been introduced to uh, this belief system that you're familiar with, does this mean that these are not mine? For the word says, I have sheep who are not of this fold. And so the church as we know it, if you look at the church today, there's a falling apart. The organizational structure is falling apart. But the organisms, like you and I, are not necessarily falling apart, but they're coming apart at their seams, because they need to be fragmented, deconstructed, and reconstructed. So that is important, that each of us understand the resurrection as consciousness and not just an event. That's important. So what are you searching for? I want to offer an experiment this morning. Right where you are, in this comfort of your homes. If you're driving, don't do this. I want you to close your eyes if it feels right for you, or just let your gaze soften. Now, think about something in your life that fell apart. Perhaps you can focus on where you are spiritually right now. What beliefs have come apart? And if you don't want to deal with that, you may say your relationships. You can think about a relationship, a version of yourself perhaps that's come apart, or a community that once felt like home. I don't want you to analyze it, just name it silently. Is it a relationship? Is it a belief? Is it yourself? Now, ask yourself, what have I been searching for since then? Looking at the church. Since I left the church, what have I been searching for? Since I left Christianity, what I've been searching for? Or maybe you're here this morning, you were part of another faith. Since you left it, what have you been searching for? Don't ask, not what did I lose, but begin to ask, what have I been searching for? What am I searching for? Because the searching tells us something important. It tells you that something in you refuses to accept the fragmentation as the final word. So it tells you that I can no longer accept what has been given to me as a belief that is not substantiated by a knowing. This searching that is all set in you. It is that divine feminine, is that divine principle. It's the Holy Spirit. Aset represents the Holy Spirit. Gathering the pieces, moving toward wholeness, even when you didn't have a name for what you were doing. You just took off on a journey. And the question is not, when will I be fixed? Here's the question. What is being born in me through this process? It's called the rebirthing, to be born again. It has nothing to do with um, solidifying your name on a registry in a place called heaven. Heaven is right here on earth. Heaven is in between your ears. The kingdom of heaven is inside of each of us. So even after this message this morning, I want you to sit in that this week. I want you to sit in the conversation. What have you been searching for since the fragmentation? What is calling you away from the familiar to the unfamiliar? Yes. So, what does this mean for how we actually live? Here's what I want to leave each of you with this morning. First, your deconstruction was not a detour. And for many of you, you're just starting out. It's not a detour. It's not a delay. It's not a denial for life. It's a necessary turn. Losing a belief system that no longer serves you was not a failure of your faith. And many times people make you think it's a failure of faith. You just have to pray harder. You have to believe blindly. But for many of us, it was the beginning of a more honest one. Secondly, remembering is active. Putting things back together is active. It does not happen to you while you wait. You gather the pieces, you seek the wisdom, you find a new community like this one, a place that allows you to be where you are, even in this community, Oasis Everywhere. We're each at a different place. Now, I may be a lot further than most of you because of the trajectory of my life and the responsibility I have in what I do. But I still make space for individuals who encounter me to be where they are. But I also know there's a time for a gentle nudge or a confrontation to say, don't go back, turn away, keep going in the right direction. You know? So when you find a community where the process that you're going through is honored, thirdly, what rises is not what was. You're not going to be the same person. Haru is not a Asar restored. Haru is new awareness, born from the process, the rebirth, the sons and daughters. When we say we're born again, we're not Jesus, we're not Buddha, we're not Krishna, we're not any of those things. We're not even our old selves. We are a new creation. You're not going back to who you were before when you're born again. You're becoming who you could not have been without going through what you went through. Come on now. And that is not a consolation prize. That is what I like to call the resurrection. That is what I like to call the transformation. So what this means for how you actually live. There it is on the screen. Your deconstruction was not a detour. The remembering is active. You gather daily. Okay? What rises is not what was. You're a new creation. Old things are passed away, and behold, all things become new. You don't have to do this alone. None of you. And if you there's come a point where you have to go through the dark night of the soul alone, but you go through it alone, but you should have a community of individuals who encourage you to stay the course and not try to deliver you, not try to pull you out of it, but to encourage you to stay the course. Now, let me bring this together. One, the resurrection pattern is older than any single tradition. It lives in the Assyrian drama, and it lives in your life right now. Secondly, the pattern is always the same. There's fragmentation, there's the searching, there's the remembering, and finally, the rising or the resurrection or the being born again. Thirdly, what rises is not restoration, it's not bringing things back to what they were, it's transformation. So life is about transformation. And the greatest metaphor for transformation is on your screen, the butterfly. Look at how beautiful that butterfly is. But for some, if you know the metamorphosis that it's gone through, it wasn't always this beautiful. It looked plain. It wasn't something to be desired, but it went through the process. And each of us have to go through the process, not going back to who you were, not going back into the cocoon, but becoming who you are now ready to be. Fourthly, this community, Oasis everywhere, and ultimately there will be local, I don't want to call them chapters, but local communities, like here in the city of St. Louis, the New Thought, the St. Louis New Thought Center is something that I'm unfolding. And in the cities that I've been involved in, the same thing ultimately when the time is right. But this community right here, this virtual community, it exists for people in the middle of their process. You don't have to have it all figured out to belong here, to be part of what we're doing here. You just have to be willing to keep gathering your pieces. Okay? And what this community does, it holds the middle, it holds a space for you. As you guys are growing through what you're going through, I'm not trying to push you to where I am. I'm just supporting you where you are, encouraging you, yes, each of you, to stay in the transformative process. And then, like the old scripture says, you will come forth as pure gold. That's important. Before we close this morning, I want to speak briefly to the principle of circulation. Everything in nature moves, energy flows. What we give returns to us in kind. The science of living seminars exists because people invest in them with their presence, their attention, and yes, the financial support. If this community has been a place of value for you over the year, perhaps this week, I invite you to support in this continuation in whatever way feels aligned. And you don't give because there's a need, but you give to support. You don't give because there's appearance of greed, but you give because of the value found. You can give via Zelle or Cash App using the number that you see on your screen, 708-368-1076. The law of circulation. You know, in the old church, we talk about tithing, but many of those conversations, when I think about, they were really persuasive, um, that people would give from their head. But I open this portal that you may give from your heart. So your support keeps this sacred space alive for every soul who is still searching. And I want to thank you for circulating the gift. No gift is too small or too large. Give from a sense of abundance, not obligation. And if today is not the season for that, simply being here is enough. Yes. Thank you. All right. As we prepare to leave this morning, let us close with an affirmation. Right where you are, I was asked that you just take a big breath in. May have gotten a lot this morning. Just close your eyes. We'll come back to what's on the screen. And in the tradition of the science of mind, we do not beg for what we need. We affirm what is already true at the level of consciousness. We affirm that every person in this space is whole, perfect, and complete, not becoming whole, already whole, at the level of their truest nature. I affirm that every piece that has felt scattered is already being gathered. The searching is purposeful. The process is protected. The rising is inevitable. I affirm that what is being born in each of us is greater than what was lost. I affirm that this community is a sacred space for that becoming. And so it is. Ashe. Amen. So, everybody here is whole. Your searching is purposeful. Your process in this space is protected. And your rising is inevitable. And so it is. So it is. All right. As we prepare to wrap up this morning, I appreciate each of you who have chose to fellowship with us this morning. I hope something has been said that is uplifting and encouraging. Okay. This is not, when I talk about remember, reassemble, rise, it's not just a tagline. That is a description of the process that you're already in if you're here this morning. You didn't come here by accident. Something in you is still searching. Something in each of you is still gathering. And something in all of us is getting ready to rise. And you don't have to do this alone. That is what Oasis Everywhere is here for. Not a place to be told what is you are to believe, a space to become who you already are. Some of you come and some of you go. I have people that come, sit here for a year, two, they step away. I hear from them through text, through emails. They pop in and pop out. And they still are treated with the same love because each of us has to be willing, be allowed to take the journey that we need. The resurrection the world needs most is not an event from 2,000 years ago. It's about what's happening in each of us right now. So if you are new, I invite you to stay for our green room conversation. Immediately following this session, you can unmute, introduce yourself, ask questions, share your aha moments. This community is built on real conversation. So I welcome you to stay for the green room. If you want to, you can go to the website, solutionsforliving.com. You can poke around out there. Right now, that website is under construction, meaning it's a conglomeration of all the things I do in the workforce development, the things I do inside of my spiritual work as a celebrant. So you can find a lot if you poke around out there. If you need to reach me, you can call me at 708-368-1076. Better yet, you can send me a text anytime because I may not respond or pick up the phone because I'm in the middle or something. But usually I'm multitasking and I will be able to at least acknowledge that I see you and that I will reach out to you. So there you have it this morning. Let's go into the green room. Again, I hope something was said this morning that was uplifting and encouraging. I'm going to bring you guys into the green room. If you're here this morning and you have a share, care, if you have a aha moment, go ahead and hit the that button, that raise your hand, and I'll know that you are here with us and you would like to say something. For those, let me see my YouTube channel this morning. I see we have quite a few people on the YouTube channel this morning. Good morning. I want to welcome those on the YouTube channel. I'm looking now. If you have a comment, you can put it in there. Let me see some of the comments. Um, Dewey Smith Morgan. Hello, my brother. He said he was watching. Uh, King T Max. Growing in my awakening, I look at things differently, knowing the truth that there is no man in the sky waiting on me to make a mistake and is ready to put me in a fiery hell. That was a heavy on my mind for a long time. Yes, breaking away from tradition has been the best thing for me because the word religion means to tie to. And when we remember, I had that date 325 AD, that is significant. 325 AD was the formulating of a belief system that would tie the masses to it. And if they were to ingest this belief system, it gave the system, the Roman Catholic Church or the Roman government, the ability to control, because the Roman government came to the realization that the common denominator amongst all people was a seeking of spirituality. So it co-opted spirituality, packaged into Catholicism, which means universal religion, and from there it rolled out this program. It rolled out a program that has been successful in how we all live our lives. We broke away 500 years ago and created the Protestant church, with Luther protesting. And now it's the same thing. We have a religious system that keeps us tied to something that limits us. But we want to remember. We really want to remember. Awesome. Okay. We want to lift up Sister Genevieve this morning. She was on the line, but she had to disconnect. Her father is in the hospital. I sent an affirmative prayer to her on last night. So we just hold the high watch right now that source's greatest and highest good is being manifested in his life, and that she has a peace that positions her for whatever comes forward. All right, let me look over here and see what we have in the Zoom room. Let me go down here. I see a lot of salutations saying good morning, happy Resurrection Sunday to my Oasis family. That's from Rachel, Grand Rising from Cheryl. Rachel said fragmenting, remembering, and then the rising. Whoa, the resurrection story so simply put into perspective for me today. My truth. Awesome. Cheryl says, I am a manifestation of an aspect of Source of Spring. Each of us, when we come together, we see the handiwork of God. When we stand alone, we see a piece of God or source. And that's why it says, forsake not the assembling, the coming together. Because we come together. If I'm, okay, let's say you are a carrot, you are a tomato, you are an onion, you are a piece of lettuce. When we stand alone, we just see that. But when we jump into community, we create a salad. Okay, I'd like to use that analogy. We are salad. Each of us are essential to that salad bowl. And so show up who you are as you are. Let the unfolding take place. Rachel said, I am the resurrection and the life. That's right. I am the resurrection and the life. Whoso believe on me shall have everlasting life. That's you. If you believe in yourself, if you reconnect to who you really are, you will live and not die. You will understand that I am not this body. I'm not my nose. I'm not my hair. As Indy Ari would say, I'm not the skin that I'm in. I'm the spirit that is contained within this. And spirits don't die. Spirits all return to source. Yes. Thank you for all the gentle nudges, Rachel said. Thank you for the lesson, Cheryl says. All right, I see a hand up. Let me go here. Good morning, Cheryl. You have the mic. You just have to unmute yourself. Yes. All right, Cheryl, I can see you unmuted. Let me see. I don't hear you though. Let me see something, make sure I got my mic correctly positioned. 1 second here, Cheryl. Okay, yeah, it should be. You want to try it again? Let me you. All right, sure. Unmute yourself and give it a shot. Let me see what's going on here. Let me try one more thing. Don't go nowhere. Let me test it right quick. Okay, my speaker is on. Testing. My mic is going. All right, Cheryl. I don't know if you want to type that in. If somebody else want to raise their hand and come on, Cheryl, are you there?
I'm right here. Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Did you do something different? Well, I don't know what happened.
I don't either, but what I was typing it in to the chat. But anyway, can you touch on how the bunny came to be connected to the resurrection?
So we have to understand that um, I would like to say business industry always tries to co-opt the marketing efforts in the world is to anything it could do to generate money. And so when we look at Easter has now, when you realize Easter and the Easter Bunny represents the ability to procreate. So metaphysically, there are some things we can get from that. But when we look at Hallmark and when we look at all these different marketing efforts that are put forth, what is an opportunity to capitalize on religious beliefs. You know, it's that it has Easter has the Resurrection Sunday has nothing to do with rabbits, other than you look at rabbits have the ability to produce quickly, they say. It has nothing to do with Easter eggs. You know, it's actually what it does. It confuses everyone when we start co-opting these stories, and it takes away from the essence of what the spiritual message is. So you got the cross, you got Easter eggs, you got hot rolls, and all those things all confused. And so anything to get people to come to church. Now they have Easter egg hunts. So they're not one and the same. And yeah, I really caution people that they have a holiday and not a holy day. So everybody can celebrate a holiday. I celebrate all the holidays. So when I celebrate, if I was to go to an Easter egg hunt, I celebrate a holiday. I do not celebrate a holy day in the expression of Easter eggs, Easter bonnets, Easter baskets. And because of that, that's why there's a falling away because people are saying this just don't add up. Does that kind of align with what you're thinking?
Well, I can just tell you, um, some years ago, I did some research, and what was stated then was that um, there was some type of pagan holiday, as you say, that was occurring around the same time, and they wanted the people to be connected as one. So it kind of got all wrapped in together with that.
Yeah, so
So,
yeah, that's kind of goes along with 325 AD when
okay.
Constantine he formulated he gathered all these bishops, but all of them didn't show up, and he put together what he would the best of a religion that celebrates everybody. So when you look at the origin of Easter, it's kind of layered. It didn't necessarily begin as a single event, but it's a convergence of you can look at ancient seasonal observances, you know, early Christian theology, and you also have to pull in cultural adaptation. And you're right. There is, if you look back, in the Bible, you can find things where it tells us to stray away from or stay away from. The symbols of eggs, rabbits, springtime, all of these predate Christianity, and they later became attached in the Easter celebration. Just like when we talk about the Passover, people tie that to the story of the when they left, when Abraham, the Abrahamic faith left Egypt, the Passover. But the Passover is an astrological time. The Passover represents, after the Passover, we move into the spring. It's the spring equinox. We enter the spring equinox. That's the Passover. And the days now begins to become longer, appear to be longer, but there's still the 24 hours in a day. So we have to understand, if you ever get an opportunity, you might want to begin to search out astrotheology. The astrotheology, there was an image that I showed you during the slide that it probably went by most of you, but it's the on the temple of Deandra is the all the
Yeah.
astrology signs and all the
Mhm.
coordinates, and like we're in the age, we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and that's the woman with the water. And this, when they asked them, what will be the sign of your coming? And we're in that sign right now. The Piscean age is over, even though it's overlapping into the Aquarian age. We're in the age of the woman carrying the water, and the water represents life, and from water everything's come. So it's also represents a time of releasing. The Piscean age was the age where that 2600 years was the time that all of the major religions took, that they formulated, they came to a head, they imposed on people, and people are breaking away from it. So we're moving into a new age right now. We're in the midst of a new age, a new season. Yes. Good, good. Did that help, Cheryl?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So when these basically, it's a blending of traditions. So when we look at Christianity as it spread across Europe, it did not erase the traditions that were there. It absorbed and reinterpreted them. Spring
Mm.
festivals was reframed as a resurrection celebration. You have eggs became Easter eggs, which symbolize new life. And then you have
Mm.
the bunny, the hares evolved into the Easter bunny. So when we even look at the name Easter in English, it's believed to be linked to Estra,
Yeah.
while many other languages use forms like Pascha, derived from the Jewish Passover. So
Mhm.
we see one thing about religion, it's a quagmire of many, many beliefs. And so a lot of times the more the story gets embellished, the farther you get away from the truth. That's what we
Mhm.
have to get back to. Awesome. Good question. Good question. I see a couple other hands up. Carolyn, then I'll be right with you. Myrna. Good morning, Carolyn. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Asar. Good morning to you and good morning, Oasis family.
Yes.
Good to be with you this morning. Just kind of wanted to comment on Sister Cheryl's question a little bit.
Mhm.
Growing up, my dad used to make sure I had an Easter basket. I,
Mhm.
lo- I loved my Easter basket. Not because I associated it with the resurrection or Christ, not even the church. I just loved the goodies. and later on, as I grew and understood what it was supposed to represent, it offended me. And then my offense turned to insult
Mhm.
because what I realized is that greed that's in man that tends to commercialize everything
Mm.
took advantage of that desire in man to be able to shape and fashion a God after his own image. It's like we have to have something that we can handle, that we can touch, that we can feel, that we can make our own, rather than just accepting source as source is. So, it turned into an insult for me. As you, I celebrate every holiday. I love Christmas. I do my Christmas tree, not because I think Christ was born in December or
Mm.
Christ whatever. I love the decorations. So I don't allow the world to define how I celebrate these holidays. Mainly, I was thankful when I I was working. I was thankful because it gave me a day off.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
yeah. So
You,
yeah, but it really did insult me to think that you can commercialize everything, and that man that we are so, I don't know, desiring that image when we're plainly told, don't try to make a picture of me. Don't try to
Mhm.
shape me
Mhm.
and all
because
that
I am too,
matters.
yeah, yeah. Because it's hard if I look at you and then I look at everybody else and I want you to represent source. Then when I look at me, then I can't see source if I'm shaping you and forming you in that image.
Good.
So that's why, because it came insulting to me. So
Yeah,
thank you this morning.
yeah.
Thank you, Cheryl, for the question.
And you mentioned a word, commercialization. I was watching news last night, and they said that this year they were expecting over 24.9 billion dollars to be spent on Easter, and that equates to $195 per person. Has nothing to do with um, spirituality, has nothing to do with the story of Christianity, but it has co-opted. And so we have to be very careful. And one of the things I did when I was pastoring a traditional church in our community, and we focus on spirituality. We did not tell the parents that they should not take their children Easter egg hunting and all those kinds, but we didn't do it at the church. We had flyers that if you want to participate in that, you can go to the local community center. And we took our kids to the local community center because we were clear in teaching our children that there's a difference between a holy day, and every day is a holy day, and a holiday. And we don't define ourselves by holidays. We define ourselves by the spiritual essence of each day. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Good, good. Anything else, Carol, before I move on to Sister Myrna?
Well, I was just gonna say, when you talk about commercially, again, that takes me back to that base desire in man, the greed, and then you operate from that spirit of greed, and that spirit of greed takes advantage of our desire or our will to handle and hold and to touch.
Right.
So to me, that's why it's insulting. You take something that is holy and you
Yeah.
commercialize it. You turn it into money. You
And,
turn it
and
into gambling.
right. And I even look at that. More people, the average person will give $195 to something that they have never given $195 in the whole year to their local local church or to a local non-for-profit that's feeding the community. But you're going to give $195 to a store that money is going to leave your community and won't find value in your community anyway. But so what we have to look
Exactly.
at, what we should put our money where we find value. And
And
so
Asar,
yeah.
think about this, especially women. You know how, and especially when I was growing up, I remember the beautiful hats and all of that, right?
Hmm.
And then later, they use that, they commercialize that to say, well, that's the beginning of new life. You got to have a new dress. If you didn't get a new outfit for Easter, something was wrong. You know,
Right. Easter meant new
no,
clothes to when as a
new
kid.
clothes.
Right.
Yes,
And it
yes.
didn't had nothing to do with a new person, but I put on a new suit or a new shoes, a new piece, a
Yes,
new
yes,
garment. But the newness comes from within. Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this morning. Good morning, Sister Myrna. How are you doing in Georgia? Was this Sister Myrna? Did I just unmute you? Or is Sister Ivy House? Myrna, I'll come back to you if I've missed you. Sister Ivy House, you have the mic. Wait a minute, let me see whose hand is up there. Myrna, okay, allowed to talk. Myrna, there you go. You,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes,
Thank you. Because I was like, I didn't see the unmute button. Um,
okay.
first of all, um, hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Um, I'm so very grateful for the liberty to express and to hear and to learn from others. And I appreciate the atmosphere and the space, Greg, um, for um, for this dialogue. I put in the chat that I need to digest the message from today again and again for a while. Um, um, because what you're sharing is a very, we all know this, but I just want to express, it's a, for me, it's a very deep and spiritual awakening message for how we move forward in our lives daily. And so in that, um, the acknowledgement that we're here, our spirits are in this temporary body, and we came here for something in this temporary body to then return to eternity, which is forever. And so I'm thoughtful in that space of that. And so um uh as I go back and forth because even with Easter and with Christmas and with Halloween and all these other things that are man-made, um, and what I in my research, Sister Carol, came to study that Easter was a goddess of fertility. And then,
Right.
and then it made sense to me why eggs and baby rabbits were the tool for that, because just like with Halloween, it's um, a
Mhm.
Wicca um, celebration that the church is attempting to put a meaning around too, with with that, because we want the children in the church to be able to have a fun time, and everything is centered around fun for children. Um, and so it's a continuous, for me, a continuous, I don't want to use the word battle, but it's a continuous
Struggle.
decision, choice, struggle on how to operate in this world, being a spiritual being that's in this human body, and all these things are happening, and how do we process what we know? Because I can't tell you, many people say to me, well, just don't take it so serious, Myrna. It's not that serious. And I was like, oh, it is that serious, but for others who may not think so, it isn't that serious. And so I then go to the place of, hey, I need to, at least for my people that I'm closely connected to, that God has connected to me, whether that be my immediate child and nephews and nieces, that I let them know what I know, because it's important that, because of my greater awareness, that they know. Because had I would like to think that if my parents knew, they would have told me, and I would have been more spiritually aware and more
Yes.
spiritually ahead of things. And so, because I, was birthed through them. And so there's a certain understanding and knowledge that we have the opportunity, and I would say the responsibility, to share with others and set up systems so that they have an alternative view
Mhm.
than the world view of how things are. And so, however we can share that. And so, bless my daughter's heart. I from a childhood, I'm trying to tell her stuff, and she's just not ready for it. It's like giving a child the keys to the car, and so get up. They have a car and they got keys, but they can't reach the pedal to drive. It's like, it's like, whoa, how can I, so she's slowly starting to get it, but it's like I've got to share, because it's so
Im-
necessary in this season, not the season before, whatever was necessary for them there, but it's so necessary now, because we see the crumbling, we see the unfolding, we see and so it's like, okay, so how do we function? How do we operate successfully as an entity of the Most High, so that we can be doers of the word, doers and beers of the word. So
Yeah.
that's where I am.
You hit it on the head when you that last thing, to beers of the word, because when you be something that you are, so when I look at Christianity, which I am, I grew up inside of it, and I still honor the stories because they give me um, a deeper expression when I understand that they're stories and what we fail, particularly people of African descent, we fail to ask some important questions. One, were we born with this? How did Christianity make its inroads into our lives? For most of us, it was forced on us. Maybe you're in this conversation this morning and you're Islam. It was forced on us. These were not indigenous belief systems. We have always, there's an African proverb that says, no man shows the child the creator. Nobody showed me God. I had an encounter with God or source. I don't like to use the term God today for what it represents. I like to use source, the creator. The creator had an encounter with me. I had a Nicodemus, I mean, I had a Damascus Road experience with the creator, and each of us, because the creator is no respect of persons, if we want to know the truth, he'll show us the truth. But he says, seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open to you. But many people in traditional religions don't want to knock, don't want to seek. They want to stay in the safety of what was given to them as their belief system. There's a difference between a belief system and a knowing system. The knowing system is that system that perhaps started as a belief, but I exercised it, I used it, and now it's a knowing. There's a lot of things we believe and we say and do, but are not giving us the outcomes. And as a result, we say it doesn't work, or we step away and don't say it don't work, but we just step away. So we have to understand, why did we come here? We didn't come here um, to get cleaned up. We came here first to remember that we are divine spiritual beings having a human expression. When we come into this earth realm, the human expression, um, it develops so rapidly that we forget that we're spiritual beings. But there comes a point where we realize that my I'm not the carnal being that I am. I'm not what I eat. I'm not what I feel. I'm not what I taste, not what I touch, the sensory self. But we understand that I'm a spiritual being. And that's where we come into a new realization that we're here to recall what we already are. That life is less about acquisition and more about recognition. So when I think about this aligns with several thoughts or streams of thought. In the Kemetic philosophy, the journey is from the forgetfulness to the awakening into one's divine nature. That's what it's about. And in metaphysics, truth is not taught, it is to be remembered. And even in the interpretation of the teachings of Jesus the Christ, the emphasis can be seen as awakening to the kingdom within, not chasing something external. So so all of us, we were born into the system that we're in. And so what is it to teach us? What are we to get from it? I can't fault my ancestors. They made the decisions that they made, but I do take responsibility for my spiritual unfolding. That's really important. Yeah.
Rick, can I just kind of add something to that
Yeah.
too?
And Carol, I'll
Um,
be right with you. Okay, go ahead.
when I was in Ghana, I visited three slave castles, and each of them had a door of no return. And um, and I'm sure every slave castle. One other thing that was very pressing for me, the Portugal castle, before it being a transitioning to a slave castle, it was actually a place where they um, shipped gold. They gold, and so to me, African bodies were more valuable to the Portuguese than gold. Um, and that realization came, and um, and so I came away saying that we are the descendants of those who chose to survive
Yes.
by any means necessary. They could have jumped ship. They could have killed themselves. They could have gone through, uh, not gone through, but chose to kill themselves when they got here. And so they chose to follow whatever they were taught to do in order to have
Survive.
children, so that they could that lineage could survive. And so here we are, you know, um, what do we do now? With the knowledge, with the truth, with the Christianity as the base. And I would say, because having known many people who were born Muslim, they were born into that. People were born Hindu, they were born into that. You were born into whatever you were born into. And then you come to you see the awakening of, okay, I was born it because that's the best that they knew to teach me to
Yes.
survive. And I love, Sister, when you see the fact that your daddy bought you Easter egg basket. So much love in that. And it didn't matter, to your point, it didn't matter, about why. It was just, I want my daughter to be beautiful and happy and eat the candy.
Yes.
It's just that's love. That's love. And so that's where I rest in that. And then again, then I go again further to the point, and I won't belabor this. It's okay, because you said something in one of the morning devotions. We were sent here for a purpose. We were sent here. And we have to remember, oh, I'm not here operating in this earthly realm just to be out here, just existing. For such a time as this, I'm supposed to do what I'm supposed to do, and to put things in place to do what I'm supposed to do. And the journey is discovering what that is so that we can go ahead and do it. So that's where I am.
Yeah, and that's important that we realize we were sent here. Like recently, I had when I was young in the military, I was one of the I was sailor of the year, I was recruiter of the year, I was instructor of the year. So I thought I was sent here to max that system. I got to the almost to the zenith, and then source said, "That's not what you're here for." I left the
Mhm.
military, then I went to work, and the same thing happened. I got to the zenith, and source says, "That's what you're here for." I took 20 years off, and I began to do what I was here for. For 20 years I spent searching information. See, it's easy today to get receipts and search things out because go to AI, you can go to Google. But I had literally spent thousands of dollars on books. I spent many hours in libraries listening to things because I was searching. So that was part of it. And then I came back to work 6 years ago to get to pick up. One, I was tired of on the hustle for money and those kinds of things, and so I go back to work for the government. And just recently, you guys probably heard me say, I'll work here till I'm in my 70s because I really love what I do. But last week, 2 weeks ago, source says, "Oh no, we're gonna change this. That's not what you're here for." And so I retired. I'm retired. I'm on 4 weeks of vacation. Then I'll go back to work and I turn in my badge and my computer. And so what am I here for? For this, what I'm doing this morning. Because even while I've been working for the government, there's certain things I can't say, certain things I can't do. But it comes back to trust. All of us have to trust that once we identify what we're here for, Source will take care of you. Just do, just be what you was designed to be. That's so important. So important. Awesome. Thank you, Marna, for sharing that. Sister Carolyn, you have the mic. Let me make sure you're unmuted. Where you at, Carolyn? Okay, Carolyn, were you back on? Did you want to say something? Okay, I see another hand.
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes.
Listen, Star. Man, you probably didn't intend to do this morning, I don't guess, but in your teaching ability, maybe you knew where this would lead. I don't know, but you have definitely opened some challenges for me this morning. When I read Sister Myrna's comment, where she was saying, I've got to think on this. As you were teaching, I was thinking, okay, I got to let this marinate a little bit. You're taking me to some places, and you're taking me into thinking that I knew was out there, but had never really stopped to look at because it was challenging to look at. That meant I had to set aside some things that I thought I knew. and be open to some new thought, new that
Yes.
was coming, and that was very. It's still challenging for me. I have to be honest about that. So as you were teaching, I'm thinking like Job. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to comment on the lesson because I don't know how to comment on the teaching. I'm going to be like Job. I'm not trying to speak on things too high for me. This is too high for me right now because it's making me go where into the unknown. And the unknown for me is not a safe place. But yet that urge, that desire that Sister Myrna is talking about, what kept us alive, I truly believe that there is something inherent in us that causes us to live, makes us want to live. As a matter of fact, compels us to live. And I thought about, and I'm going to get to why I'm back on the line. I, in my Hebrew Bible class, I had all kind of students in that class, Muslim, Catholics, Hindu, all of them, right? I never put forth what my theology was or what my ideology was. But one thing that you say in our morning prayer every morning, you know that there's a power higher and greater than you. And I would tell the students, I would say, look, I don't care what you call him, as long as you know that he is. As long as you know that it is. As long as you know that there was something outside of you that created you and that is sustaining you. And so, I'd come to that understanding. But lately, and this is why I'm back on the line, the thing with my sorority, when we talk about idols and gods and stuff, there's one thing going through the Greek world now on denouncing, the crossing over. And I'm like, and I have sorors that really get offended with me when I say, I don't remember bowing down to nobody called Minerva, you know? I don't
Right.
remember raising my hand and pledging my life or my. And I'm like, so what are you asking us to do? Forget the fellowship and the sisterhood and the relationships that were built through these organizations? And I'm like, you guys are really taking this in a place that
Yes.
for me is like divide and conquer, right? So you divide us in this area so that you can conquer us in another area. And it's just, for me today, like I said, I've got to let this teaching marinate. I've got to soak in it for a
Yeah.
minute. And I really appreciate Sister Myrna for saying that because it gave me the expression that I needed to say, what am I supposed to do with this source? You're bringing me this morning. I was comfortable thinking what I was thinking because I didn't put an emphasis on, I don't get up to watch the sun shout. There's a thing going around. Well, when we were kids, my dad almost went blind out there looking at the sun trying to see the sun shout on resurrection morning. I'm like, that's crazy, Daddy. Now I'm wearing glasses,
Yeah.
But yeah, just continue to challenge our thinking. I appreciate that. And really making us go into places where we wouldn't delve, or where
Because
we felt we were restricted from.
right. You were drawn. I don't really know how you ended up here, but you ended up here. Every one of you, under the sound of my voice, ended up here. But here's what I want to say: two things. There is a movement in the land right now for Black Greek lettered individuals to drop their alliance with. Now, let me be simple about that. I am part of a Black Greek lettered organization. I'm not part of a Black Greek organization. And I did not, I'm part of Phi Beta Sigma. I know we have some Deltas here. We may have some AKAs here. We have different individuals who are part of what we call the Divine Nine.
Hmm.
Not one of us, I don't know, not one individual who would tell me that they gave allegiance. When I pledged, I did nothing, I made no allegiances to anything that compromised my faith. And
Exactly.
these people are now saying that we made these allegiance to. Now maybe the Europe, the white Greek letter organizations did that. I am not part of that, and so we got to be very careful. Now, if we want to drop flags, we need to drop the flag of Christianity.
Okay.
Many of our pastors, this is where we don't let our reasoning play all the way out. If I make my living every week by having a Sunday service, by promoting a message that keeps people coming back to the pews, and I am enlightened, it's going to take a lot of integrity for me to say I'm no longer going to teach it. And that's the encounter I had in 20 in 1996. I was called to the pastorate of a church. Actually, the church was given to me. Beautiful church, one of the largest physical buildings in the community, and we had everything that it took to have one of the largest communities, but it never got there. I think on our best day, we may have had 250 people attending on a Sunday. A lot of people came for a community. But here's if I would have been instrumental in that church maxing out, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. Because it's difficult to leave something that looks successful to go into something that there's no proven success. I don't see
Exactly.
too many people who's teaching this kind of teaching that has massive followings. But this teaching is not about massive following. It's about freeing the masses, liberating the masses from being tied to something that keeps you from being as powerful as you were meant to be. That keeps you from realizing you don't need an intercessor. You don't need a priest in your behalf. The word even tells us that we are a kingdom. We shall be a kingdom of priests and kings. Kings and priests. So you're both a king, a queen, and a priest, a priestess. You don't have to, there's no more go-betweens. But we allow too
Exactly.
many of our pastors, our preachers, what the pastor says, you need. Now, I find it quite strange. I am very verbal about what I believe. I posted on Facebook. I have yet to have a pastor come on my page and say, you're teaching false truths because they know I have receipts. But on my page, I'm not trying to convert anybody. What I'm doing is affirming for those who are where I'm at that said, you know what? I'm glad I found this because I was thinking the same thing. But all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to close with this, every one of us are going to go through what's known as cognitive dissonance, the letting go of that which we are familiar with to take on that which is enlightening. It's difficult. You're going to be pulled back because the masses of the people are still there. But you got to say, I'm going to sever ties with anything that does not represent my highest and greatest good. I'm going to crucify myself daily. I'm going to look at my thoughts. I'm going to look at what I do. I'm going to ask, is what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, aligned with truth? Does it do what it says it's going to do? And if it doesn't, I let it go. I don't say in Jesus' name anymore. Only time I will pray in Jesus' name, if I'm in a crowd of people who are believe in the name of Jesus, I will honor that and speak that. But if they're where I'm at, I'm not going to say that. It is done unto you according to your belief. And I'm not trying to pull the rug out from under anybody. Sister Rachel, thanks for waiting. I see your hand there. You got the mic. Good morning, Sister Rachel. I hope she's still with us. You might need to unmute yourself. I see your hand is up. Okay, Sister Rachel, if you're there, unmute yourself. Let's see, I see another hand. Okay, that was Sister Rachel. Maybe I missed her hand being up.
You hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, let
You
me
got two
let me
things.
turn.
You got to mute one
Yeah,
of your devices.
yeah. Let me put it in the other room, cause
I can hear you good now.
I'm eating with a tree.
Sister Rachel, what you just, we don't hear you now, we hear you far away, but what you're doing when you said, let me put you in another room, we could hear you clear. Okay, want to
Do
try it
you
again?
hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, loud and clear, just like the commercial.
Okay, let me kind of walk away from the screen. I just said I really enjoyed this morning's teaching. Do you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I just love how all of us are on, we are at different stages on this journey. And it is so respectful for everybody's place. You do respect everybody's place on the journey. And I thank you for that. I really resonated with the teaching this morning, me personally, now, is because when I began deconstruction and when I began on a search about 3 years ago, I the Kemetic way is where I started. That's how I was introduced, and that I had followed Asar and a Seth and all of that teaching for about over a year, and I would just look up that and um, and that's why you're teaching today for me. Well, it could resonate. Was easy for me today, and um, and that's how I stumbled up on your channel with minister that deconstructed after from Christianity after 30 years. So that's how I came into this community, and I'm just grateful for those that gave into this community. When you said that giving is not necessarily we are supplying a need that we feel you have, or we are paying for being
Yes.
church. Really, like I told my sister, sometimes being a part of, when we look at being a part of some things, it requires membership. But those that have gave in the past, I'm reaping the benefits of, since I was on my journey and my search, I ran up on this community. And so I do want others likewise that are searching and knowing that they need to be, that they're feeling they need to be on a different path to find that community where what they need to be in. So that was really good for me. So thank you so much for the teaching, and I'm just enjoying all the input of my sisters that came on today. But I thank God it's so much easier now. The Kemetic teaching and the new thought and the metaphysical teaching has gotten so much easier, for me.
Yeah. And so the Kemetic teaching, so I caution myself
Mm-hmm.
because like
Mm-hmm.
I've been, there's an organization called the Asaraset Society, which
Mm-hmm.
I was initially introduced to in the 90s, and that's where it gave me a foundation, and then I began to
Yes.
see the similarities. But even though I
Mm-hmm.
teach Kemet, I also say
Mm-hmm.
now Valley Civilization spirituality because I
Yes.
don't even want to limit it to that. I go back to the beginning of how did my ancestors express these truths? They did not see God as,
Mm-hmm.
like example, the Europeans would say that they were polytheistic because they saw God in the sun, they saw God in the moon, they saw God in the alligator, they saw God in the lion. Well, Christianity, we do the same thing. We got Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nisi, we got, Elohim, so we still have different names that represent essences of source. And so even though you hear me go back to the Kemetic thinking, because that's as far
Mm-hmm.
back as I can go right now. But when I find wherever you find the humanity expressed, you're gonna find source expressed. And the first communities that expressed source was those Nile Valley
Yes.
communities. And so that's why I
Yes.
could take it back to the beginning. And then if you know the beginning, you will know when there's a deviation in the story or when
Yes.
it's been
So that,
co-opted. Yeah. So I
yes. So
celebrate. I celebrate today.
I do.
Go ahead.
I do too. I'm trying to get my phone together. I
Yeah.
do. I celebrate today, as well. But it was a foundation for me, and from the Kemetic teaching, from my foundation in Christianity, and then like I said, I learned about the Kemetic, then the Nile Valley, and then metaphysical, then
Yes.
New Thought, and now I see it was a building as it
Yes.
went on. And I was open to it because I knew that what, like I said, what was serving me was leaving me empty because I just felt like, and not meaning it wasn't profitable, but I knew it was, I had a nudge. I wanted to evolve and I knew there was more.
Yeah.
This is ever evolving. It's just don't stop at one thing. It's
Yes.
ever evolving. So thank you.
And I want to caution all of us.
Morning, Jermaine. How you doing?
As Cheryl, you want to mute yourself?
Hey, Miss here, call me
Hey,
back. I'm
hey,
on my
Cheryl.
way over to Smitty's house.
Okay, Cheryl Rogers.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. You can hear
Your
me.
your
All right.
mic is hot. That's okay. Just want you to let you know your mic is hot. So don't start talking about me because I'll hear you.
I'm gonna say you the best thing that ever happened to me. Bye.
Okay. So here's what I'm saying. Where we are, let's always respect where other people are also. And when people come to me, I don't I don't offer them anything more than they asking. But usually I will ask them, what difference does it make? If I gave you my answer on this that's different from yours, will you take it into consideration or will you go into argument? And I have to always be conscious of what do I need to share with them. Sometimes it's a teachable moment. Sometimes it's a moment just for me to reflect on the goodness of Source, how far I've come. I once believed like that. And that's so liberating for me. But my heart goes out to those who are stuck in a narrative that is not taking them anywhere. But if that's what they want to be in, I let people be in. So I'm just making a space. That's what the New Thought Center or Oasis Everywhere is not even a new thought center, it's a now thought. That means we are always evolving into what is coming forth as truth. When you encamp in old truth, you become outdated. But when you're open to the evolving, it says in the last day, knowledge, the knowing would increase. So we have to make space for that knowing. Something we know today will be displaced tomorrow, perhaps, because of a more refining truth. So that's all I have today. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate each of you that have supported this ministry, continue to support this ministry. Without what you've done, it would be more difficult for me to do what I do. So I love you guys, and I'll talk to you in the 6 o'clock hour on tomorrow. I'm going to look through here. I don't see anything else. Let me look on the Zoom room. I don't see anything else. So we're going to go out and enjoy this beautiful day. It has risen, the sun. And then I stopped saying good morning because that's an oxymoron. Good and morning. Morning represents Mourning. I know we say Morning, but your body don't know the difference between morning as in daytime and morning as in morning. So I like the term grand Ra. Ra represents the sun, sings. The sun sings. Grand rising. When the sun rises, I go into harmony with it. So grand rising to each of you. Have a wonderful day. Love you. Peace.